I used rap back in the 90s, now I'm back on my own grounds, putting forth this ancient shit. You can hear it in the sound, my voice, giving you scholarship and there's no choice. I'm called Maine, so my main objective is go as I came, like Cain. We kill up our brothers because of the Bible way. Somebody that took the recessive brain, put it in the black man's head. My folks, they should all roll out with me just like these books I read. I'll bring your ass from amongst the dead, like I said. I'm bred, tell motherfuckers what the ancestors said. I'm bred to kill white supremacy as dead. I'm bred, tell you all I know about the melanin molecule. I wake sleep as about it, they slumber, sit in the school, the solar and rules over a holographic attitude. That means that my demeanor is set to tell your ass the truth. That means that my position is here to give your ass the scoop. Don't need a Benz when I ride, I'm a guy, a new food. I do this, self-initiation to send one through this. Study MOJEP, come up with the conclusion. Medical association is ruthless. My conclusion is to take these words as adjectives, nouns, and verbs, providing a spark for your spine, so when I speak them, they'll be heard. From the heart to the pineal, spirituality to show you what's really real. To God and man form, and the solution ain't the deal. To worship something outside yourself is to worship something inferior to yourself. You can send it to us sin, so the only one who can save your ass is self. Sight beyond sight, like lion, know I come with my eye attached to my sword. Heart precede my walk, actions precede my thoughts. So I'm off to take a walk, is how I be dealing with my thoughts. I be staring at my people, y'all wanna be gods or not. I'm an alchemical nutcase, my pathwork got me moving in my own pace. I'm called Maine, so my main objective is to bring the pain I can't get fucked with. Literally, I'm in the cultist. I brought my fire from the heavens, I'm Prometheus. I shine my light in the darkness that makes me Lucifer. Get it? Psychologically, I'm inclined to do this shit till you can't fuck with it. Crushing every rapper, they don't have the mental capacity. Ain't talking about shit on their music, you motherfuckers is sloppy. So I'm back from the grave, knowledge I crave. Then I get a sass of pussy, I'm Dionysus with my thesis. Raising my kundalini, I'm out the bottle, I'm the genie. People judge me how they want, but they really can't beat me. People push me to the point, but they really can't see me. With a camera lens and a bunch of friends in this 3D they living in. Yeah. Let me hear that all.
All right, well, welcome everybody to the show. I had the chat off, my bad. I just turned it on. Didn't realize it wasn't connected. Hold on 1 second. Just make sure I got everything good here right now. All right, we got the chat up. All right, I think we're good. All righty. All right, cool. Apologize for that. Didn't realize that was off. Greetings. We want to welcome everybody to the show. Primordial Chaos coming live from a hot and baking Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It is baking here today, people. It is 92, 93 degrees. We have been fortunate. We've had a long, extended, cool winter. The spring. Anyway, for here, I'm not talking about like up north in New York, where I grew up, where you get used to that cold. But here, it's been, cool. We haven't really hit a patch of the extreme heat in a minute, probably since the middle of last year. But that summer heat is back. It is officially baking down here. So yeah, warm. All right, so we want to welcome everybody to the show. Before we begin, as we are waiting for people to file in, I'm just going to go through a couple of quick announcements. We have the upcoming ritual on Friday, May 31st. I re-forwarded that flyer out to people on the list. That will take place here in Fort Lauderdale. That'll be Friday, May 31st, 8 p.m. Eastern time. You must request an invite in order to attend. The cutoff for the invites, I believe it's that Wednesday, the 29th. Yes, Wednesday the 29th. So still some time, still a couple of weeks out. As I said, May has 5 weekends in it. So it appears to be a substantially longer month. And it seems like this month, as opposed to the 3 months prior to it, is dragging a little bit. But that's unusual. But anyway, that's coming up at the end of the month. Again, email me at the email you see in the description box, the khnum19@gmail.com, to request an invite. The online classes, as I said, they will begin the next session. We just finished one a couple of weeks ago. The next session will begin July 20th. I have sent the information out for all that have requested it, for all that were on the list that I had. If by chance you did email me, and as I've said last week, it can happen when you get a bunch of emails. Some might go to the junk box and I don't see it. So if you did request information on that and I didn't get you on the list, if you want information for the upcoming online classes that will begin July 20th, again, send me an email and I will get that information to you as soon as I hear from you. And again, to pump out the conference of the Journey of the Black Adept 2, which is a 3-day event we'll be doing in October like we did last year. And again, that's something we will do annually once a year. It's a 3-day event where there will be different workshops, different classes, different presentations. I've also said some of you guys who are attending, if you would like to do a presentation on a left-hand path topic, contact me. I'm trying to also let new people present. But again, contact me and let me know what it is you would like to present if you're attending that event. And I'd be happy to do, that for you. There will be 3 different working/rituals we'll be doing. It's a fun time. We did it last year. We expect it to even grow this year, and obviously to continue growing as we do it over the years. That'll be October 25th to the 27th. It'll be here in the North Fort Lauderdale area. And again, email me if you would like information on that. If you're also interested in a spiritual consultation or a reading, just hit me up. Let me know a couple important things to save time, the time zone you live in, because I do deal with people that are either out on the West Coast here in the States or out of the country. So it's very critical you tell me your time zone. So when I shoot availability times, it is in sequence. We want to make sure we're on the same page and specify what it is, either a consultation or a reading. And then we can go ahead and set up a date and time that works for both of us. I do request at least a 2-day notice because, as you know, I'm very busy with that consistently throughout the week. But I do my best to get to everybody in a fairly quick manner. So again, for all those things that I mentioned, you can email me at khnum19@gmail.com. All right, so kind of staying in line tonight's topic. We're going to remove a lot of spookism. We know Egypt in circles of consciousness, different groups. It's become a little trendy. It's kind of become almost in a sense, very religious in nature. But we're focused and concerned on us as the individuals, how we can better improve ourselves, right? The work we've been talking about, or the information we've been talking about for the last several weeks, and as I've mentioned several times before in the past, what I like to do leading up to when we gather at the end of the month is kind of the videos or a segue to that work we do. You're still going to gain from it, whether you come or not, as far as what we go over here on the videos and stuff. But we're staying within that construct of how do I better myself? How do I reach my potential? Do I really understand what, again, black magic is? How does it transform me? How does it bring about a change in my life? All right, these are questions we should be asking ourselves if we're on this path, regardless. Of course, there's many different spiritual systems that are connected to this path. But one thing you will find in common, whether it's vampirism, Luciferianism, Heka, witchcraft, it don't matter what it is. The objective you will find, one thing that's common is, how can I master myself? How can I gain my full potential and power to grow? Because if magic isn't transforming and changing your life, as I like to say, the four principles of the path, the 5 principles of the path to self-mastery, if it's not transforming and changing your life for the better, obviously, first and foremost, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially, but it starts with knowledge of self, okay? You have to get yourself to a certain awareness. It's going to segue into why I chose this topic, and because all the things I'm talking about now is really what this story symbolizes and what does it represent to us as the magician. So we're gonna kind of walk through that. But your work should bring you to the awareness of those things you need to correct or fix or give attention to about yourself. So this is not, just getting caught up in all these external things. Oh, peace, Brother Gene. Good to see you, brother. I have to give a shout out to Brother Gene Butler. I just saw him pop up in there. Well, peace and greetings to everybody. I know I didn't greet anybody in the beginning. But yeah, if you can't look at and analyze yourself and see that effective change there, then you're not really doing any magic. Sometimes there's that fine line where we can get trapped and we get caught up in the external things, the aesthetic things, the tangibles. Now, I'm not saying that they don't serve a purpose. They do, whether it's in your ritual chamber, whether it's tools, whether it's things you use to enhance imagery in your ritualistic working. That stuff is most definitely needed. And those that know me, those are things I enjoy. I love enhanced imagery. I kind of like the full-blown ritualistic work, as they say, with all the bells and whistles. Everybody has their own flavor. Everybody has their own, pizzazz or touch to it. So I'm not saying those things aren't necessary, but sometimes even us on this path of what, as I've mentioned before, in the past, of what we kind of accuse other people of doing, we can get caught up in that same nonsense ourselves. So really it starts with knowledge of self, going within and really figuring out what it is about yourself that you need to change. Because we all, I don't give a shit who you are. We all have something that we need to fix, correct, change, or better about ourselves. And that's why I say, when I ask somebody, anytime I run into new practitioners on this path, regardless of whatever methodology or system that they use, I always ask them, well, what inspired you to come on this path? Why do you want to be on this path? And again, it's not a trick question, and it's not a right or wrong answer. It should be, centered on the fact of first gaining knowledge of self. Too many times you see people come on this path for illusionary bullshit, right? Some people want to come on this path because they think they're going to do money magic and shit and their problems are going to be solved. Some people come on this path because they think it's a method or a system they can use for destructive magic, but they don't understand the science and the principles behind destructive magic. And it usually backfires in their face. Why? Lack of knowledge of self, knowledge in general. So one must really do critical thinking, a thorough analyst of them, being very analytical of themselves, right? To come to the conclusion via studying and all those things we do to get some of the answers, okay, to these questions, okay? Because as I said before, the externals and the tangibles are just one small minute. I know we can get indoctrinated by movies, media, the internet, social media platforms. We can get these spooky concepts of what left-hand path is. And I'm not just talking about people that don't know about it. I'm talking about us. We can sometimes get caught up in that nonsense. But when you remove all the external nonsense, the indoctrination, the sensationalism, Really, magic is about doing work to transform yourself, right? This is what we need to be asking ourselves. All right, are we really doing that? Do we understand what transformation and change is? Or are we just doing a bunch of different ritualistic work, but it's for naught? Now, I'm not talking about, you can say, well, yeah, you know, I do a bunch of different things and I get this feeling from it, or we're not talking about just momentarily feelings of gratification. We're talking about consistency, okay? We're talking about consistency. That's the key. That's why some people only get moments of it, where other people you will find are consistent, and they're consistent because they do work regularly. Some people, unfortunately, there's no explanation. It comes easy for them to get results. That's just a fact. You'll see it. Maybe it's more focus. It's more concentration. Maybe they're more have a thorough understanding of what they're doing. That could be part of it. But then there's some people, you know, they just don't get it. And usually that's just because they're not applying themselves. Trust me when I tell you. They might think, and I did this and I did this and I'm still. But I think sometimes if we don't slow down the mind, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're not really doing that thorough analyzation of ourselves and what we do, we can miss some of the messages, right? And lately I've been talking about, you know, messages of self-awareness, right? We call it our intuition. All these different terms we might use for it. Sometimes we don't follow that, right? We've always been told at a very early age, right? Follow your intuition, right? How many of us go against that on a regular basis? How many people question their magic and their power because they feel like they need external validation? This tends to happen a lot. I talk about this a lot, right? I'll get emails all the time, people saying, I did this working or this ritual, and I did this and that and blah, blah, blah. And then I got these great results, right? And I'm reading the email. I'm like, this shit is cool. Good. You know, I'm like this person. And then they followed up. Do you think I did it right? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? Now you just fucking diminished your power. You did it right because you got the results. You did it right because however your intent you set out to do it, the power and the passion that fueled that intent gave you the results. So don't question it. As I said before, we have something in magic. When we finish our rituals, we say, so it is done. That means I leave it there in confidence that what I just put out there is successful. And we tend to struggle with that. So having said all that, why am I talking about all that? Well, it connects to this. We all might be familiar with, in the Book of Gates, right? The story of Ra's travels or traverses through the Underworld, the 12-hour nocturnal journey. Let's talk about this for a minute. You first find this recorded, in the Book of Gates. It's recorded on the alabaster of Seti I, Pharaoh Seti I's coffin, 19th dynasty in ancient Egypt, right? This is where you see this recorded. You can find the story in its entirety, again, in the Book of Gates, the Book of Pylons, kind of giving you the narration of what this journey represents. Now, how do we look at that on this path? Because remember, we're not looking at this. We're removing the externals. I know you look at a lot of conscious comedic circles. You hear these terms, and they're not clear, unfortunately. You know, my ancestors, right? My Egyptian ancestors. We acknowledge our ancestors. Some say worship their ancestors. We have to ask our questions. We have to ask ourselves these questions. Are these stories literal? And 9 out of 10 times, the answer is absolutely not, okay? This is why you can see similarities in many of these stories over the years in different cultures, but that's another class for another time. But I'm bringing that up to say, how should we as adepts look at that? What does this story mean? What does it represent? How do I apply it on my path? Okay? That's what we should be asking ourselves. Well, when you really read it and you understand it, place yourself, that's you. You're in the position of Ra, right? As we know, the story, Ra at night from night hours till sunrise, right? he keeps a pep at bay. That's what the story says. But let's explore the whole journey through the underworld just a little bit more in depth and in detail, because it's deeper than that. There's more to it. We say the 12-hour nocturnal journey because it represents the many challenges and obstacles you as the adept will go through on this path. Many of the obstacles you will face, many of the difficulties you will encounter in that journey. That's the important thing to understand. When you read the story of Ra going gate to gate, we're going to go briefly through each gate, what deity stands at that gate, right? And how we can connect that to our journey. Because remember, each of those archetypes represents a certain force or energy. Right. I find it very interesting, which we'll elaborate as we go gate to gate. I find it interesting that Ra first encounters Apophis or a Pep at the 5th gate. Right. Then when you get to I've mentioned this a little bit before in the past. When you get to the 9th gate, you see on the back of a lion, you see Set and Heru standing there at the 9th gate. Then at the 10th gate, he encounters Apophis again. And he has now the ability to bound or bind a Pep or Apophis in chains so he can pass through. What does this mean? And why was he given the power after going through the 9th gate to have that ability? Because remember, when you go back to the 5th gate, as we're going to go through, he wasn't so successful there. We know the story later with Set, who was the only one able to bind a Pep or a Apophis. We know the story. Ra couldn't do it. There's a symbolicism there because now when we connect what Ra represents and Set representing isolated consciousness, that isolated intelligence was needed, to tap into the ability or the power to gain control, over the situation. How does that relate to us as Black Adepts? Well, it really represents us making order out of our personal chaos. Ra couldn't do it. Ra was trying to destroy that chaos. Now, notice I said at the 10th gate, it says he bound Apophis or a Pep so he could pass through. See, the illusion is chaos will always manifest. That's a reality in your life. That's the problem with a lot of other systems. They'll promise you this pie in the sky. They'll tell you in all these religions and philosophies and dogmas, if you follow all these codes, creeds, and dogmas, everything will work out for you, right? There's some reward at the end of the rainbow, some pie in the sky. You'll be rewarded for being a good boy or a good girl. That's just not a reality. So we have to pay attention now, because in the 10th gate, he bound Apophis so he could pass through. Now, we know the story goes, he spent his whole life at the hours of night till dawn trying to destroy a Pep. And what happened? Every day, a Pep would resurrect and come back, and he'd have to do the same thing over and over until he came to the realization that wasn't the answer. Well, this represents us on this path. Sometimes we tend to bury our chaos. We try to ignore it, bury it under the rug, act like it's not there. We don't want to deal with issues. This is what this really represents. We don't want to deal with issues. We feel like if we just bury them or don't put attention on them, they're going to magically disappear. And as I mentioned before, spiritually, a Pep comes to you in the same hours of night that Ra fights it, right? How many of you stay up or awaken or restless at night where a lot of worry and anxiety starts to come to your mind? You're worried about money, bills, what you got to do, projects or things you got to get accomplished. It's funny how it'll come at a certain time when the mind's still able to focus. That's when a Pep or chaos will start to manifest mentally. I'm talking about consciously and unconsciously, right? So that's why we say it's the nocturnal journey, the 12-hour journey, because each hour represents a certain pylon or gate that Ra approached, right? Now, we're going to correlate that to us as adepts on this path, this journey of self-mastery, right? This is what we do. This is how we work these spiritual systems. We don't look at them externally. We look at them, we place ourselves in the position because, again, we're not trying to worship Amun Ra, Heru, Set, or any of the other Egyptian archetypes. We're trying to embody and become what they represent. Gotcha, buddy. So we can get that understanding, that knowledge, that wisdom, and understanding of self. That's the difference. This is how you bring about transformation and change. Now, if you're external and you're still on the vibe where you set up altars and you're groveling in front of statues, saying supplications and prayers, I'm not knocking it. If that's what you do, that's what you do. But that's not what this path is about. I'm going to make that clear. I don't tell people what to do and not to do. That's just, I don't do that. You're free as a living, breathing, thinking, intelligent being to do whatever you want. That is your own given right. You can do whatever you choose. But what I will do is put some clarity on it. You take it for what it is. And I always suggest I don't tell anybody to take for face value anything I say. Do your own research. Are we going to come to the same conclusion and agree on everything? Absolutely not. But as if I can motivate you to do that research and come to your own conclusion, whether you agree or in line with what I'm talking about or not, I've done my job. The purpose of this show is to get you thinking. Whether it's in opposition to your ideologies, that's irrelevant. But if I can get you thinking outside the box, if I can motivate you to look deeper and challenge yourself, then I've done my job. Again, as I said before, I don't do this video channel. This is not about being liked or hated. I don't care about that. I'm not interested in that. If you love me, power to you. If you hate me, power to you. But you need both of those emotions and energies to be productive in this world. You can't have one without the other, right? It's good to have some people hating on you because it shows that you're doing effective things. Is it good to have many people hating on you constantly? No, then it shows there's some inconsistency in what you do. Now, vice versa. It's not good to have it when you're everybody's buddy and everybody loves you and you're the greatest thing since fucking sliced bread. That's not good either. That shows a weakness in your character. It shows people take advantage of you, whether you're conscious of it or not. So it's that fine line in between. We call it harmony, right? Not balance, all right? So what I want to do real quick, is go through the gates. Now, I would recommend a book, this book right here. I'm not going to really go through it. I just wanted to put it up there. This gets into, but let me explain to you what the book is about. This is The Visions of the Pylons, a magical record of exploration in the starry abode by J. Daniel Gunther, all right? He is a 40-plus year member of the OTO, Order Templi Orientis, which I went through myself. So I want to make that clear. It is coming from an OTO Thelema Crowley perspective, but that's irrelevant. Remember, it's up to us as you know, masters on this path to extract from it what we can apply to our path and journey. So I want to be clear. It does come from an OTO perspective. There's some good information on this journey in there. It's actually a recollection of workings he did years back with this concept that we're talking about right now. But you take it or take out of it what you can to apply it. I found it very interesting. Now, there's some work or rituals in the back if you decide you want to actually utilize. Feel free. It might inspire you to create some of your own work. I don't recommend you doing word verbatim like they're in there. I always suggest you come up with your own creativity. All right. So let's go through the gates. I want to go through the 12 gates. So what is this 12-hour journey? We're going through the 12 gates and just what is encountered there and what does it represent and how can we utilize it and apply it to ourselves in our spiritual work on our path to get a better understanding of how we can apply it magically, obviously, right? So I'm going to there's a section in this book here. I would also recommend people to get a dictionary of Egyptian gods and goddesses. This is by George Hart. Book came out, I believe, in the 80s. It's a very good book, quick reference book.
You can get it on Amazon. Actually, wow. The first publication of it was 1945, believe it or not. It's been published a couple of times, 1945, 1986, and 1987. I didn't even realize it went back that far. But very good book, a very good quick reference book. I found that he's pretty accurate. And it's an A to Z on Egyptian deities, concepts with Egypt, pretty much anything you can think of. So if you're looking for, not too much of a complicated book, but you want to educate yourself on Egypt, great book. I always suggest to people that I work with, if you want a good understanding of what the deities represent and to give you a good idea of how you can work with them when you create your own magical rituals, this is a good book. Gives you a good, thorough and understanding of that. All right. So there's a section in here on page 68 that I'm just going to run through, right? The gate deities of the underworld, right? And it goes on to explain each gate, but to give you a brief understanding, the royal tombs at Thebes and the funeral papyri of courtiers present a vivid picture of the Egyptian underworld known as the Duat. For pharaohs, the illustration of the unhindered and safe passage of the sun god, which is Ra in this case, through the Duat was paramount, since the monarch himself was envisioned as being among the deities in the solar entourage. In the case of the officials, the underworld's perilous regions had to be traversed without injury to reach paradise. So what it represented was the individual had to successfully pass through these gates, as it uses the term here, to get to this paradise. Let's remove the spookism out of that. Really, the nocturnal journey, what it represents, us on a magical path, is we have to tap into the unconscious aspects of ourselves, because that's what this really, you're going to see when we go gate to gate and the deities that are there and what it represents. You're basically uncovering that which is hidden within the subconscious mind. You're unlocking all of those things about yourself that we like to call shadow work on this path, but not just those things. You're uncovering also your hidden power and potential that you weren't aware of that existed. There's been many things that have been suppressed about us that started from a very early age of indoctrination. As I said before, from the moment we emerged, from the womb of our mother, indoctrination began. Whether it was religious, educational, cultural, traditional, it started at a very young age. What that did over a long period of time, whether we're conscious of it or not, and I know most of us are to an extent, a lot of the religions we were brought up in, and again, we don't blame this on our parents and grandparents, because they were just doing what they thought was correct, because it was a continuous chain of indoctrination that got passed down to us, until part of the process on this path is we had that aha moment. We woke up and said, enough's enough. There's more to this. I can't believe in these fairy tale stories of snakes talking in the garden and unicorns and parting the Red Sea and all these fairy tales, right? We realize there's more to the story. So we uncover different aspects of the hidden within ourselves, okay? That's what this journey is about. Slow down. That's what this journey represents, is about. So one has to be successful. Each gate, as we go through it now, represents a particular deity. And now we'll get a little more in depth of what that deity represents and what does it connect with us within ourselves, right? All right. For both sun god and nobleman, it was necessary to negotiate pylon of gates along the route. Ferocious guardian deities threatened to annihilate those approaching to enter the portals. Superiority, however, could be gained over these gods through magical power concomitant with knowing their secret names, What does this represent to us on this path? We have to unlock that power within ourselves. When it says to master them via their names, to understand what they represent, what consciousness they emit, for lack of a better word. And the magic itself is, as I said earlier, is taking that and applying it to self. So you're able to embody what it represents, not worship it, not glorify it, not bow down and be submissive to it. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about mastering what it represents. But let's continue, right? All right. The following is a synopsis of how these hazardous gateways and their associated deities were imagined, both for the sun god and royalty and for the courtiers, all right? So, first gate. Now, I will say in the book by Jay Gunther, he doesn't chronologically line the gates up that you will see as recorded in the Book of Gates or the Book of Pylons. Because remember, he's given an account of some of his personal work. I found it interesting in his book, in his personal work, he had Set placed at the 12th gate, which I found very interesting, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. Makes sense after you read his book and the experiences and what he came up with, but we'll get back to that. All right. Gate 1, the god Sia, right? S-I-A. In the prow of the boat, and the sun god urges the snake called Desert Protector to open the gate. The sun god, under the form Atum, leans on his staff, watching the destruction of his enemies. What is Sia in ancient Egypt? We hear the term Huhi, Heka, and Sia, right? Notice Ra had to rely on the god Sia, right? Let's get a quick definition of that for those that may not be familiar. There's no coincidence that that's what we encounter, or need, I should say, which is a need or a tool that had to be applied or used at the first gate. Not a coincidence. All right, so here's a brief definition. Sia, the god personifying the perceptive mind. So stop. Before Ra even had to begin his journey, he had to invoke Sia, the perceptive mind. This is important, people, because it deals with knowledge of self. So in order for him to even begin this journey, this is the starting point, the origin, right? The god personifying the perceptive mind, Sia, was created from blood dripping from the phallus of Re, the sun god. In the Old Kingdom, Sia is visualized as the right side of Re and responsible for carrying the sacred papyrus whose contents embody intellectual achievement. So Sia represents that intellect, that knowledge, that wisdom, right? The intelligence. Right? Is there a connection to this, to the isolated intelligence? We'll get to that in a second. There is, right? Probably Sia is equitable with the intellectual energies of the heart of Ta, PTA, some say Pad, in the Memphite theology, resulting in the creative command of Ta's tongue, Hu. Right? Who is the creative force of will? Who he, right? We hear this term in ancient Egypt, which nobody really talks about, or in my opinion, explains correctly. You'll see those three terms intertwined together, Hu, he, Heka, and Sia, because they describe the key elements of what we call Heka or black magic in ancient Egypt. You'll hear it mentioned all throughout the coming forth by day in the many papyrus texts, right? All right, so here's a brief definition of Hu. I want to make sure so we're clear on this. The god who personifies the authority of a word or command. Hu came into being from the drop of blood from the phallus of the sun god Re. So it's piggybacking off of that. When according to the theology of the Pyramid Age, the king becomes a lone star. His companion is Hu. The royal authority is maintained in the afterlife by Hu, acknowledging the king's supremacy and allowing the monarch to cross the waters of his canal. It is tempting to correlate Hu with the power of the tongue of Tar. Why do they say that? Because when you read in the pyramid text, it says Tar, or thought himself into existence, because it's dealing with the authority or the word of command. What does it mean when it says he thought himself into existence? I don't know if we ever really ask ourselves that question, if we're familiar with the story and we've read it over the years. I know I've read it a bunch of times. What does that mean? Well, it's dealing with the creative force of will. That's what we do as magicians. We enforce our will upon a situation for that favorable outcome, right? It's a very important concept, right? So let's go back. So that's the first gate. And notice it also finishes saying that he had to do this in order to destroy his enemies. Now, this is not just literally talking about physical peoples. We got to apply this, all the enemies or the obstacles that we have, that we're facing within. It could be personal traumas, fears, insecurities. All of those things are enemies because they're enemies to our personal development and growth. All right. So now we're getting to a point. Step one is self-awareness. Okay. Self-awareness starts there. If you bypass that step, people, you're wasting your time. You'll never figure anything out. See, some people want to go from point A to Z, but they don't want to do any of the steps in between. They automatically just want to go from A to Z. It doesn't work like that. Trust me when I tell you, you will fall flat on your face and fail. Okay. Gate 2. The guardian god is swallower of sinners, and beyond the pylon is a lake of fire. All right. So here doesn't give a particular name to this guardian, right? When it uses the term swallower of sinners, right? How do we apply this? I know you hear that word. If we hear the word sin or sinners, obviously that's automatically the mind is going to race to monotheistic concepts. It's not talking about that. How we should look at this and approach this, quite simply, is if we're not being real with ourselves, if we're not dealing, as we like to talk about so much, our bullshit, we will get consumed by it. So this is what we face at the second gate. If you think you're not going to deal with your bullshit, fix or correct those things about yourself, you will get devoured. This is a reminder when we enter the second gate. Now, I'm in the process of putting a whole ritualistic work together for this, which is a whole nother story. I'm going to take this and I'm going to fuck with this on a whole nother level. But the point being is, if we don't deal with the real self, not the illusionary self, right? Not who we think we are, not who we like to portray ourselves to people, who we want people to see us as, but who we really are. If not, it says devouring, destruction at the second gate. All right. So now we approach the third gate. So I'm going to just go through these 12 gates quickly, and then I'll go to the chat, look at your questions, your comments. I'll take some phone calls. I want to hear your dialogue on this, people. So many times I know, again, I'm not telling people what to do and not to do. This is about learning. Let's get some questions, some dialogue. I know you guys like to talk amongst yourselves, and that's fine. But let's try to eliminate some of the useless shit we can do in our free time. Let's take advantage of building upon this, giving input, questions, dialogue. And I'm not just talking about personal comments, because we can do that in our free time. But let's really analyze this and study this, because this is a critical step or key to what we call self-mastery. All right. The third gate, the serpent, is called Stinger, and the gate itself called the Mistress of Food. Beyond its jackals guard the lake of life, forbidden of access to underworld inhabitants, because it is here that the god Ray breathes, right? So when it says, this is some good shit. So when it says, now notice we're seeing different forms of the serpent. right? Because when we get to the fifth gate, we know who's going to manifest, right? It's going to be a Pep or a Apophis, right? So we're seeing that fine line. Notice it says underworld inhabitants don't have access to it because it's here where the god Re breathes, or Ra, right? So we have a separation between what we think, this existence, our own reality. And you would read this and think the underworld inhabitants can't enter because they're unholy or they don't have, no, it's actually the reverse. There's a disconnect here. Now, the Emerald Tablets of Tahuti elaborates on the one thing. It connects the as above, so below, the so within, the so without. We hear that term all the time, right? And what Tahuti described was trying to teach in those Emerald Tablets, how this is all correlated and connected, which sometimes we don't look at it like that. Religion didn't help any because they created the separation. How? By the false illusionary concepts of time, a beginning and an end, right? They created this above heaven and this below hell, and they teach it and promote it as if it's a separation, and it's not. So right out the gate, we're given these false illusionary concepts that disconnect us from the primordial source, right? That primordial chaos, right? It's automatically removed because in that primordial chaos is where the understanding rests or resides, right? Or where you have to tap into to get that understanding, right? Let's go on. Gate 4. Here there are gods carrying measuring cords for fields in the underworld, paralleling scenes found in courtiers' tombs which show the calculation by the ropes of the corn crop for taxation. Also, the Egyptian notion of the races of mankind is symbolized by illustrating 4 groups of figures representing the cattle of Re, mankind proper. There's 4 races, they'll say. The Egyptians, if you've ever seen this drawing of this at the gate, you will see the depiction of the faces of 4 different men. You'll see them from light to high yellow to brown to beige to very pale. This is supposed to be symbolic and represent the 4 races of mankind, right? In the text, it says it refers to the Egyptians, which would be ancient Africa or Northeast Africa, the Nubians, which stands out to me, the Libyans and the Middle Easterners. So really what one encounters here, right? When it talks about the measuring cords, right? You can connect that to a reaping, right? So there's some type of reaping going on here, or the gathering of many different people. What are they gathering? What are they reaping? Well, how do we look at this on this path? Or how can we apply this in ritualistic work? All right. Well, what it's calculating or gathering are those that quote unquote are getting it, right? It's measuring, right? You can liken that to the symbolic story, even in the Bible, in the Book of Revelation, when it talks about measuring those within the inner court of the temple, right? So we see here a connection with an awakening or an awareness. And it's specifically saying this applies, you want to use that term, to the multitude of different races on the planet. So this is what Ra is experiencing here, right? That's at the 4th gate. Now, this is a very famous picture. I would suggest you Google the 4th gate, and you've probably been very familiar with this imagery if you study Egypt. You've probably seen it many times before, but again, never really expounded on. Now, I've watched some people overanalyze this and take it very literal and start to connect it genetically to all this historical race stuff. That's your thing, so be it. Really, at the end of the day, that's not going to do nothing for you because you can't really utilize that and apply it as far as ritualistically, so you could do work. But historically, Excuse me, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But I don't really care to even bother with that. Gate 5. Here's a very important. Very important. Okay, pay attention to this. So now we see there's a certain gathering of awareness, intelligence. It's breaking it down in the category of rape. But here we get to the 5th gate. The gate is called the Lady of Duration, and the serpent is flame-eyed. Beyond is a dangerous stretch inhibited by the snake Apophis or Pep. So what happens when one has the awareness now? If you have the awareness on something, right? Now we're approaching the point where we've done that intro, we've done that thorough analyzation of ourselves, we've gone within, we've uncovered certain things about ourselves that we did not know about that might need work and fixing. Once we do that, you always hear me say on this path, when you work in certain systems, your bullshit is going to come to the surface. That's part of the process of getting yourself right. Now, this is what's getting ready to happen at the 5th gate. All of the chaos, because now that you are, if you want to use the term, awake or awoken, you are now aware. You are conscious to the insights and the things that you need to do. And that's what I mean when I tell people, it doesn't get easier when you're on this path. People think, oh, I'm going to get on this path and, my life's just going to be a cakewalk. No, it becomes more intense. Why? Because there's more of a responsibility now, because So now we, on this journey, at this gate, have to prepare ourselves now to face all the shit that we uncovered. And I'm not just talking about the bad shit, because not everything is bad. Because there's some good things you're going to uncover that you weren't aware of. But that's not what the challenge is going to be. Now you've unlocked all the traumas that you've been dealing with your whole life that you thought you were over. Your insecurities, your fears, your shortcomings, your habits and behaviors that are detrimental to your spiritual growth. All of this now is coming to the surface. You come to the realization that shit, I thought I was doing all these things right, or I thought I was doing things good. And now you get hit upside the head with a ton of bricks and realize, man, my shit is fucked up. I really got to do some work. You ain't really as hot shit as you thought you were. You don't really have it figured out as you thought you had it figured out. That's called a life lesson, where boom, you get smacked upside the head. So what a good magician does is say to themselves, or she say to herself, I'm going to take this shit and I'm going to master it. I'm not going to take the bitch attitude and complain and whine. I'm not going to take the approach and blame other people for my shortcomings, blame external things of why I failed. I'm not going to cry wolf that somebody's out to get me. That's the victim role. You play the role of the victim, you wallow in your own sorrow. Back to gate 2, get devoured. You understand? We don't do that on this path. We embrace challenges. We embrace obstacles, right? That's what we do on this path. We don't run from it. We don't hide from it. And we don't make excuses for not dealing with it. That's what keeps us sharp as magicians, the challenge, the quest. As I said before, if you're comfortable in everything you do, then find something else to do. It's not the right thing for you. You should never be complacent or comfortable on this path. I've said that many times before. Never get comfortable. The moment you're comfortable, this is not for you. You should always be finding ways to challenge yourself. Why? To bring out your full potential and the best in you. You can't do that if you get complacent. I'm saying that because I see so many times over the years, people fall in love with something they like. I talk about this a lot. Just because you like something, that may not be necessarily what you need. People confuse that shit all the time. While you're falling in love with something because you like it so much, I love being a vampire magician, but you got other shit going on in your life that needs a different approach, and you're not even paying any attention to it because you're so in love or like with something. Okay? So I say that to say, be aware of the work you're doing and why you're doing it. Don't just be doing shit just to be doing it because you like it. Because when I hear somebody say that, I say, okay, you like it. That's good. You have to have a like to do something. You know what's even more challenging? Taking something you hate, you despise, and figuring out how you can apply math. Let me give you an example, right? I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. Take a form of music that you totally despise, that you hate. We all have a genre of music that we can't stand. We all do. I don't care who you are. Not everybody likes every form of music. I like a lot of music. I can pretty much listen to anything, but there are certain music I hate. Well, find a genre of music you hate, okay? And listen to a song and just try to find one thing in that song that you like. I don't care if it's the chorus. I don't care if it's one line. I don't care if it's one word. I don't care if it's a certain hook in the music, a certain drum beat. I'm telling you this because this enhances your magical power. You'll understand it more. I challenge people to do that. Take whatever genre it is. I don't care what artist it is. See what you get out of it. What it does is it gets the mind to focus and look for the things it needs instead of focusing on all the things it doesn't like. That's the objective of that exercise. And I'm using that because that's how sometimes we knock ourselves off the path and diminish our power, because we're more focused on the shit that's a distraction to us, and we're not focused on the things we can get grown from. So do that. I challenge people to do that and tell me what you get out of it. Find a genre of music you absolutely fucking can't stand, you hate, and do that. And let me know what type of premonition you got, mental stimulation or growth from it. Trust me, you'll understand how powerful you are and how powerful the mind is. So I want to throw that out there. All right. Okay. So we now are at the fifth gate, and we've encountered Apophis, evil of face as he is described here. 12 gods contain his deadly power by seizing him. The heads of those that Apophis has swallowed emerge from his coil as the sun god passes through this region. So we see, not here at the, like he did when we get to the 10th gate, you'll see. So we see here, Ra or Re did not have the power. This shit's going to get deep at the 9th and the 10th gate. Because again, this is describing what we go through as magicians on this path, with the challenges we face in this journey on this path. So we see that Ra still did not have the power and the ability to keep Apep at bay. We see 12 gods had to protect him as he passed through, but Apophis swallowed them up, right? Chaos will devour everything, people, if you allow it to. So we see right here, Ra still doesn't have mastery over his chaos. He's still struggling. He is awoke. He is aware, but he still doesn't have the ability to apply it. We don't see that till the 10th gate, and we're going to get back. We're going to get into that when we get further up. So we see he keeps the journey continues. He gets through the 5th gate, right? Gate 6. Ray in his boat approaches 7 jackal-headed poles with 2 enemies tied to each one, ready for beheading. All right. Now we're the 6th and the 7th gate. I'm going to go into 7th. There's a connection here. Now he's encountering some weird, funky shit. What does this mean? Right. So let's go to gate 7 because they're kind of connected. Actually, 6, 7, and 8. The gate 7, the gate is called Shining One, and beyond it, 12 gods hold a rope from which emanate 4 whips, 4 hawk heads, and 4 human heads. The hieroglyphics relate this image to the mysterious appearance of Re, but not in sufficient detail for us to elucidate its subtleties, right? So let's back up, right? The hieroglyphics relate this image to the mysterious appearance of Re, right? The sun god, right? You hear Ra and Re, right? This is talking about the hidden one, right? You'll hear one of the attributes, you'll hear not Ra, the triad of Re, or the triad of the sun god. You will hear 3 terms used. So why I say these are connected, let's explain. What it represents, literally and symbolically or spiritually, One, you have the rising of the sun, which represents the aspect of Atum, right? You have when the sun is at its zenith point or at the highest point of the day in the afternoon. That's when it's symbolic or a representation of Atum with the N on the end. And look this up so you can understand this. And then when it sets, right, you have an aspect called Amun, A-M-U-N, Ray, the hidden one. Now, if you've studied religion, it's funny how all the monotheistic religions end their prayer with that term, but it's in lesser languages. You'll hear it as Amen or Amin. The Muslims will recite Salatul Fatiha, the opening, right? And they'll do it in this chant. And they'll say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alaihim. Ghayril maghdubi alaihim waladdallin. Amen. The Jews say the same thing. The Christians say amen, right? And you see in Revelations 3, verse 14, it refers to this amen or amen. It is faithful, it is true. It describes it in the text, right? It represents in Egypt the hidden one. What's the hidden one, right? Well, here's the hidden one. There's another aspect of Ray they don't talk about that you rarely hear about. And this is what this is talking about. There's that point. Ask yourself this, because this is a representation to the things that are hidden that you must unlock within yourself. There's a point when the sun, now we know the sun doesn't set, so I'm just using a metaphorical term. The sun doesn't set, but there's a point where the sun disappears over the horizon that it happens, but at what moment exactly do you capture it with the naked eye? It happens so fast, you don't really see it with the naked eye. That's Akhnun Ray. That's a whole another concept. So that's the fourth aspect of Ray, because it mentions, as I said here, it talks about here the four images, or this relates to the four mystical appearances of Ray. You always hear people talk about, again, as I said, Atum, and Amun. But what's the fourth? What's that form? What that represents when the sun disappears over the horizon, and Akhnun also comes over the horizon before it transforms into Atum, because not only when it disappears over the horizon, or the Horus or Hebrew rising, it also, at the moment it comes up, the next shadow hour. Now, we know scientifically the sun does not rise and set. We're talking about this symbolically and spiritually. That represents the hidden self, where one must go, the unknown. So now we're at the gate. The unknown is being unlocked here, people. Okay? This is what this is talking about, all right? Gate 8. Here exists a fire-breathing snake who burns up the enemies of Usir or Osiris, right? That's gate 8. Now, is it a coincidence that we have, because gate 9 is going to piggyback off of it. We have Osir or Osiris, who what? Is, as we know in the text, is the one that is part of that journeying of the soul to the underworld with Amun. But originally, if you go back prior to the 21st and 22nd dynasty, that was Set's role. A lot of people don't know that. Well, they do, but they just don't talk about it. Set was that chief deity that was in that place. We know that changed via the Osirian cult and Osirian history. Why all of a sudden now at the 9th gate? So we see, because Osiris is that guide in this story, we see there's that protection there, right? But when we get to gate 9, this is interesting. We know Heru is the sun, right? We know there's an aspect of that resurrects in the form of Ra called Re or Ra Harakati, right? We're familiar with this. Crowley talked about this in a lot of his writings. That is a remanifestation or the resurrection of our true self in the form of Ray Harakati, right? If you're familiar with that deity, do your research, okay? But we see at gate 9, it says on the back, at gate 9, on the back of a hawk-headed lion, stand Horus and Set, or Heru and Set. So now Ra's at the 10th gate, or 9th gate, and now he has what we have as magicians on this path, the realization of the harmony, not the balance, that we need and we must create within ourselves to get an understanding of what this shit is all about. Why am I saying that? As we know, Set represents the isolated consciousness. One must, it's not an option, must separate and remove all of those things about themselves that are preventing or creating that distraction to their growth. You must remove all of the systems of indoctrination, all the conformist mentality, all of that stuff. You must give it away and leave it to the wayside. When you come on this path, you have to drop all of your personal ideologies, philosophies, and dogmas. Anything that you deem personal must be put on the back burner and eliminated, or you'll never understand this path. So what Ra's realizing here, he is his own worst enemy, just like we realize on the path, because some people still will come on this path and they still bring previous systems with them. I see it all the time. They're still bringing old ways, but dressing them up a little bit different. And usually that's a sign of insecurity. Set represents the true or the higher self, not what people tell you in reverse in those fluffy paths, that Set is an embodiment of evil and the devil, and they correlate it to the biblical character, the devil. That's all bullshit. That's part of the religious indoctrination, right? Set represents the isolated consciousness. How was he birthed into the universe? It says, according to the story, he ripped himself from the womb of his mother, Nut, right? Motherfucker didn't even want to wait to be born. He said, no, man, fuck this. I'm coming out now. What does that mean symbolically? Okay? What that means symbolically is the intelligent, isolated thinker. The one who understands that part of themselves that has always existed, where they separate. In order to understand that, you must separate yourself from all of that bullshit, all that external stuff, all that indoctrination, right? So now we're getting to the meat of it. Heru, in this case, would represent the lower self, right? Heru or Horus represents the more physical part of our nature. We could call it the lesser or the lower self when we use it spiritually, but both are needed, okay? So they both serve a purpose, but we're giving it wrong. We're taught to be super fluffy and stay away from the aspect and the aggressiveness that Set represents. That's totally untrue. This is why you see in ancient Egypt, the image of Set and Heru, you'll see it's a body of one man with the two heads, one of Set facing one way, one of Heru facing the other way. That represents harmony within the magician, right? You need both of those energies. So we see at the 9th gate, before one can bound the pep and master their chaos, that's going to come next. One must come to the realization of this right here. So it's not about being super fluffy, and it's not even about being super left-hand path or dark. That's what I meant in the very beginning of the video. If you want to watch it, we can get caught up in the externals and the tangibles because everything is so dark and black magic, and I'm so left-hand path, and I got to just over-externalize this shit. Well, we're guilty as doing the same thing as fluffy people do on fluffy paths. But we realize, the real magician realizes we need a harmony of both of those energies. So now Ra understands and says, shit, I've been relying on unrealistic things to master this. So look who pops up at gate 10 now. But there's a different outcome. Remember what happened at gate 5. At gate 5, Ra needed those 12 deities to protect him, right? But Apophis or Apep devoured them all, because that's what chaos does when you have no control over it. It devours you. It's not a bad thing when you understand it, because what it's trying to show you, your true essence, your real self, you have to go into that primordial chaos to understand it. That's what it means when it says out of order, out of chaos, or I'm sorry, out of order, out of chaos comes order, right? You hear this term all the time in alchemy. Out of chaos comes order. It simply means you must make yourself. Nobody can do it for you. All the praying and the mantras in the world and all the groveling in front of statues and all the hallelujahs, praise the Lords, is not going to help you master that chaos. Okay, because that's a scapegoat from it. That's not dealing with it. A magician is able to master his chaos and control it. That's what the story of Set being able to slay Apep represents. But what happens? Every morning Apep resurrected, and it has to be done all over again. What does that mean to us as magicians? It means chaos will always manifest itself. But guess what? When you have the knowledge of self and the awareness, you are now more equipped to deal with it because you have the tools now. Whereas when you don't know, you're not awake, you don't have knowledge of self, when chaos comes in the form of life's everyday problems, you get smacked upside the head like a little bitch. You get consumed by your relationship issues, your family issues, your money problems, your career and your job and your work. Your whole life is a fucking hot mess because you haven't mastered your chaos. You're still subconsciously looking for a solution outside of yourself somewhere. You may not think so. You might say on the surface, I don't do that. I'm not talking about consciously. I'm talking about what the fuck you got going on up in here. You're struggling with that because you haven't really looked into it like you thought you looked into it. So this is about making harmony or order out of that chaos. This is what we do. We embrace chaos. We don't run from it. Because if we run from chaos and we take on the mindset of fearing it, it consumes us, right? We talked about that in the previous gates. This is the reality, people, okay? But let's go on to the 10th gate now. So now shit's about to change now. Watch this. Shit's about to hit the fan here, but in a good way. So gate 10, now Ra approaches gate 10. Beyond this gateway, the snake Apophis is bound with chains so that Ray can pass through without the snake attempting to swallow him. Remember, he had the 12 deities in the 5th gate, had to protect him, and it didn't work because Apophis or Apep swallowed them. So now it says he had the ability now to bind or bound Apep, and he passed through on his own free will and accord. What does this represent to us as magicians? So now this is the point where the magician has come to the realization that they're in control, that they have the power. They've always been in control. Nobody's ever had the power over them. We created that illusion from birth. We were told this bullshit in religion when we were born and raised in monotheism, be it Islam, Christianity, Judaism, that there was some external power that controlled the course of our life. This is what we accepted it. And what gave it the power was that we accepted it. That gave it the power. But just as easy as you accepted it and gave power in that belief and you gave it life, you can destroy it by simply rejecting it. So I asked the question to a lot of people over the years. Do you need God or does God need you? From a monotheistic concept. God really needs you more than you need him. Because if you just eliminate that principle, period, the God-devil concept, because it's based on the principle of there's a God, there's a devil, you're in the middle. And there's this tug of war for your soul, right? And God's telling you that you have to do all these things. You have to follow all these rules. If you do what I say, you're going to be okay. I'm going to take you to the fluffy clouds up in the sky, and you're going to be flying around with little fat kids in diapers, and then life's just going to be hunky-dory. But then on the flip side, he says that, well, if you don't listen now, you're going to go to this horrible place called hell where you're going to burn for an eternity, right? And then the fuckery part about it is you're told you got free will. How can you have free will? It's not free because there's terms and circumstances attached to it. So it's not free, people. Okay? Get that bullshit out your head. So there's been this tug of war going on. So the question is, from a religious perspective, God needs you more than you need God, but you're told otherwise. What gives faith life? Your personal belief in it, okay? But their same Bible says faith without works is dead. So blind faith can be a destructive thing, all right? Let me correlate it to this. Maybe this even helps more. We all know somebody that went to jail, right? And had some type of religious epiphany, whether they came out a Muslim, a born-again saved Christian, or whatever. Why does that tend to happen a lot? You ever notice that? That happens a lot with people that do, go to jail, serve time. All right? Because when an individual is put in a very critical, distressful, serious situation, they try to find something to cling on to something that they can grasp, in order for them, to feel good about themselves. Hey, if religion does that for you in this case, fine. But what they fail to realize is they went into prison. They give credence and respect to some faith and belief system as transforming and changing their lives, and they don't give themselves any credit. You still had to be the one that wanted to be motivated to change. You just used that concept to do it. So we discredit ourselves and our power and our ability to tap into our potential to change. It wasn't, in essence, the religion that did it. They convinced themselves that it was, and they truly believed that. And I say they truly believe that, which goes back to, again, they are the prime source for that power transformation and change. Whether they want to accept that or not, whether they want to give that credit to some spooky, mystical figure, that's on them. But when you really understand the power of self and the knowledge of self, trust me, that's the reality of it. All right. So we see now we're getting to a point on the journey where the ability to master this shit. So we got 2 more gates, and then we're going to finish this up. All right. The 10th gate, the 11th gate. The gate is called Mysterious of Approaches and is guarded by a cat-headed god whose name is Meuti. Clearly a use of a onomatopoeia to suggest a cat's meow, right? Now notice there's a cat-headed deity at this gate. What does this mean? We're dealing with female 1, right? Now when we go back into ancient Egypt, we can think of a couple of cat-headed deities. The first that come to mind is Sekhmet and Bastet, or Bast, as some will say, right? When we look at what Sekhmet and Bast represent, because this is Sekhmet, in essence, guarding the gate, right? When we understand what Sekhmet represents, tremendous transformation and change. We know she also, like Set, carries the Pekibet knife, right? You see that little knife, you'll see her in some images like you see Set carrying. That represents the knife of separation. How does that apply? What it signifies that we have come to the point where we are now having or getting that understanding of what we call Khepera or Keper, right? We have come to the realization of who we really are. When we go into, and in here it'll get into it, Khepri, the sun god, right? What's the unique? Let's go into that for a minute, because now we're getting to understand what Khepri or Khepera is, right? So let's go to it though. I want to read that real quick because this is key. All right, so I'm gonna come back to that, and then we'll finish with the 12th gate, and then we are done with this. I'm not gonna read the whole thing because it's extremely long. All right, no, not extremely long, but let me go through some of the key points. Khepri, right? You'll see it as that sun god creator in the form of the scarab beetle. This is a very powerful symbol. Very powerful symbol to us as magicians. The image of the scarab is also synonymous with ancient Egypt. This choice of insect to convey one of the forms of the sun god illustrates the keen eye of the Egyptian in observing nature and his imagination in trying to understand the universe. See this? Khepri is the sun god at dawn on the eastern horizon, right? We know why they connected. You'll see the symbol of Khepri in the form of this, the scarab beetle, right? I've always told people to have a scarab beetle on your altar because Khepri or Khepera represents many different things to the magician. We know the scarab beetle rolls its own dung. We know it reproduces on its own. Why? And then we see it's synonymous with the sun god creator. So what this represents to us is remanifesting ourselves, recreating, reconstructing ourselves. We connect to this concept when we work our magic. That's why it's such a powerful symbol. That's why it connects to all of this. So we need to understand Khepera, Khepri, however you want to pronounce it, okay? We need to have this understanding so we can, one, know about ourselves, because as I said in the beginning of the video, if you don't have knowledge of self, you can't be made aware of the insights you need to utilize to bring about the change you need to bring to make yourself better, to master yourself, right? We hear all these terms, but how do we do it? We have to do it by being aware of the changes that need to be made. And that's what real magic is about: transformation, change, and growth. If you're not doing that, people, you're not working any magic. What's up, buddy? All right. So there's a connection there. And we have the cat-headed deities at the gate, right? Represented by Khepri and Bast. And then we know what they represent, all right? It's just important shit. But look who we finish with at the 12th gate. Beyond the gate, the 12th gate, Isis or Aset and Nephthys rear up in the form of serpents. Here, the symbolism of the journey through the portal ends on the theme of the emergence of the sun once more into the sky as a sacred beetle. Khepri, I was just talking about that. That's why I went to Khepri before I finished with this 12th gate. But we were talking about the Klipothic tree a couple of weeks ago. And you can synchronize and see the similarities between Aset and Nephthys and Naama and Lilith, because those are the two key figures that take you through the journey to get that knowledge of self. Is it a coincidence that we see them two at the 12th gate? I don't think so. Okay, and they're the ones that complete or put the finality on the journey. It's not the male, right? Take note of that. Now, in Jay Gunther's book and his work, through his experiences, he had Set at the 12th gate. I get it. I can understand it. I would tell you to read it on your own because I'm not going to go through all that right now, but I would tell you read it on your own. I see why he came to that conclusion in his own. That's his personal work, though. So that's just be taking as maybe information to gather and observe different things. But we see who stands at the 12th gate. Not a coincidence. That is the female, not the male. Okay? And I've said many times before, so who finished? Now, even not even the 12th, the 11th and the 12th gate. The quicker you understand that divine feminine energy is that ruler on what we call the spiritual realm, if you want to use that term. I'm just using a term people can grasp. It is more powerful and aggressive and masculine in nature than what we know as male energy. And that's a whole nother story for a whole nother fucking day. All right. If you did not see the entire video, I would suggest you go back. I would hope you use, before I go to the chat, look at some of the questions and take some phone calls. And I'm hoping that you guys got some good questions in there. Okay. I hope it's just not random back and forth conversation, because then we're not learning nothing. But if you came late when the video uploads, I would suggest you watch the video in its entirety. I would suggest you now also go read the Book of Gates, the whole story of this in detail, and see what you get out of it. See what you get out of it, because this is about knowledge of self, transformation, growth, change. Going in the 12-hour journey, nocturnal journey into the underworld is uncovering the hidden aspects of yourself, all in line of what we've been talking about the last several weeks. That's the key, people. Not doing the shit you're comfortable with, not doing the shit that makes you feel good because you like it. That's great. But it's about challenging yourself. It's about mastering yourself. It's about uncovering those things you're not comfortable with. All right? Hold on one second. All right, so what I'm going to do in a minute, I'm going to go to the chat. I'm going to go through some of the comments and questions in there. Once I'm done with that, after I do majority of it, I will open the phone lines for those that might want to call in. If you would like to come in live to the room, just type in at the bottom, and I will bring you in if you would like to ask a question or a comment. But let me just do this. All right. All right, so I'm going to go up to the top, people, okay? So be patient. If you just recently typed a question in, I will get to it, but I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. I'm not going to read, again, you guys' personal conversation between each other. I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to look for questions, okay, or comments in relation to what we're talking about, all right? All right, well, give a shout out to Rich GTV 305. Peace, brother. And good to see Brother Gene. I don't know if you're still in here, but good to see you, brother. Okay, what else we got? Word Weaver had typed in a comment, maybe something later down. I've been afraid of magic for far too long. Okay, so maybe that's a statement saying you're not, no more. You're kind of learning more about it to rid yourself of those fears. I would that's what I'm taking that as. I would assume. I'll see if you type anything later down. Good comment by Phil. Some think they can do all their bullshit here and be rewarded with some angel wings. Good luck with that. It's true. It's not going to happen, people. The helping hand you're looking for is at the end of your arm. It's that simple. Okay? If you don't do this for yourself, if you don't get this right yourself, one, nobody's going to do it for you. Let me establish that. Two, nobody's coming back for you. I don't care. If that steps on some people's faith system, belief systems, sorry. Nothing's coming out of the sky to save you. There isn't going to be any rapture. You're not going to be taken up in the clouds, going to some place called heaven. And then what do you do there? We're just going to be floating around, eating cloud sandwiches and floating around with fat kids and diet. It's not going to happen, people. Trust me when I tell you. So you could either believe that bullshit and wait and find out the hard way, or you can get up off your ass now and start doing things to better yourself now, rather than thinking there's pie in the sky and some great reward later for you, because it's not going to happen, people. Trust me when I tell you. Yeah, what else we got? All right. Okay. Has anyone ever read or listened to the audiobook called Conversations with the Devil? I read the book a long time ago. I would suggest people read it. It gives some good insight. I think it smashes a lot of indoctrination. It depends. I know religious people have read it and have gotten super spooked out. But I think us on this path, I would suggest it. Put it on your reading list. It is a good read. It'll give you some good insights. I read that a while ago. It's been a minute. Shit, I don't even think they had audiobooks when I read it. Well, good word, Weaver. I'm glad to hear that. Wow, and this was a comment that was typed in earlier. I have so many times applied sinner to monotheism because of my born again background. The teaching is amazing and liberating. Yes, born again's rough. As we know, there's so many different sects of Christianity, which is confusion in itself. I always ask the Christians, there's going to be a long ass line in heaven. So I don't know if there's going to be a line for the Baptists, the Jehovah Witnesses, the Seventh-day Adventists. I don't know if they're going to have separate lines, or I don't know if they're all allowed to be in the same line. Because the confusion and the fuckery is they all claim to be following the teachings of the same man, but they can't seem to agree in a unified way. Obviously, if you go through any major city in the United States, especially in urban areas, you will find a church pretty much every block or two. You will find non-denominational churches, Baptist, Pentecostal, Church of Your Mother's Ass, Church of Your Father's Ball Sack. You will find them all. Episcopalian, I mean, there's gonna be a long ass line in heaven. There's gonna be some confusion. So there's disunity in the doctrine, number one, itself. Sanctified born again Christians tend to be very fanatical and very right wing, if you want to say. They're very conservative but fanatical. In the Southern Baptist Church, they still to this day use a quote in the first letter of Timothy, "Thou shalt suffer a woman not to teach." They believe women don't have any role in the teaching of the church. And they don't even allow females to teach to this day. And some of y'all that might know this, if you came up in that background, you know what I'm talking about. This still goes on in the Bible Belt. They literally believe this bullshit. So that's tough upbringing. And I've known many people that came up in a born again, sanctified, that whole, it could fuck people's minds up, I can tell you that. And I found once they get a taste of freedom, especially they can either run wild with it or they can use it as that liberating tool. But yeah, tough background. But hey, as long as you're coming to that realization, that's a beautiful thing. So earlier, I was talking about music for those that maybe missed it. If you see some of the comments in there, country music, we were talking about an aspect of the journey going through the gates. I was talking about how we can get more focused on the things that distract us, which takes us away from focusing on the important things. So there's a little exercise you can do. If you weren't on earlier, I'm going to repeat it again. I was saying there's a thing you can do with music. Find a genre of music you absolutely hate. We all hate some genre of music. I don't care who you are. There's some music you just don't listen to. You hate it. It just doesn't resonate with you. You don't like it. But pick that one. Listen to some songs or a song, or pick out any random song, and focus on finding one thing in that song that you like. That could be a simple word, could be a chorus, it could be a line, it could be a music or a riff in there, it could be a guitar, piano, or drum bit, whatever. I guarantee you'll find one thing that you do like. I'm telling you to do that because it shows you the power of the mind when applied correctly. So I would like everybody to do that exercise. Let me know what you got out of it. So again, find a genre of music that you can't stand and do that. And see, when you start focusing and concentrating on the things you need to know and block out the things that you don't like or don't need to know, you'll see how you can unlock that hidden potential. So it's a little exercise. I'll challenge you guys to do it. I'm probably going to have to do it with like death metal because I can't stand that music. It's just not my thing. I can't understand it. Maybe it's because I'm so busy being distracted. That's going to be a challenge for me because I don't listen to that type of music. So I'm going to have to really sit there and weave through the noise and the chaos and see what I can find. Okay. I see somebody typed in, Space Candy typed in country. So if country music gets on your nerves, and it good choice. Now, when it comes me to country music, I can deal with a little bit of the old school, like Kenny Rogers type of shit. It was more mainstream, but this new shit now, got this country rap rock infusion. That shit is fucking garbage. But anyway, whole nother story. But just a little exercise to throw out there to people, right? Hip hop, yeah. I just saw Phil type that. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, I mean, you got. It's funny how, like, even shit, you can look at it in reggae music. It's the same thing. You go look at, like, I like old school classical reggae when reggae was reggae. Now reggae is infused with R&B, hip hop. A lot of the more modern day reggae artists, they want to be American. It's just not my thing. Yeah, they got hip hop. That's a good one. I like that. All right, so Word Weaver, you have a experience with thought or Tahuti 18 years ago. Yeah, so tap into that because remember, again, I know it's personal experience and we don't know exactly what that is. No need to get into it in detail, but we know thought or Tahuti represents the intellect, right? The scribe, because he unlocks that inner wisdom, that knowledge that resides within us. And Tahuti is a great deity to work with to enhance your knowledge or wisdom and your intellect. A great ritual to do with Tahuti, which I'll do during the fall time, or what they sometimes classify as the fall equinox. Simple candle magic with an orange candle invoking the energy or the wisdom consciousness of Tahuti. But it's a good energy to work with. All right. All right. So Phil types in, is the soul the same as the superconscious? I hear more talk of spirits and want to know where the soul fits in. Yes, the soul, literally, right? When if we go into the concept and we hear the term of the Ka and the Ba. But let me read something real quick. Some liken it to the superconscious. Yes, some will tell you that. But the soul is a true essence of who you really are. Now, soul is also different from spirit. We have to understand that. Unfortunately, in some systems, and even in religion, you can get confused because they make it sound as if it's the same thing, and it's not. All right? So hold on one second. I want to see if I can find something in here real quick. Actually, hold on. It's in another book I have here. I think it would be just a good general understanding to piggyback on this question. Hold on. Let me grab something real quick. All right. Let's get a little more understanding of this. The soul. Let's talk a little bit about that, which is very important because, in essence, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is for that purpose, right? So the Ka, right? In ancient, not the Ba, the Ba. Let's talk about two of them, though. The vital essence or life within an individual, right? When the Ka leaves the physical body at death, the Ba then ascends to the vital essence in the spiritual realm, or the place of the material in the heavens. We're going to talk a little bit about this. In an abstract view, the Ka may translate as soul. However, not its entirety. The Ka is the closest to what we know on this path as your daemon, or your agatho daemon, your personal daemon, right? I bring that up so we can correlate it on this path. It is your true essence, your real self, right? The personal daemon that you hear us talk about a lot on this path, as you put it in there, Brother Phil, you could classify it as your superconscious. So there is that connection there, most definitely. Because long story short, is the true essence of your real self, of who and what you are. Now, the spirit is a reflection or an emanation of the soul, right? It's not the same thing. Unfortunately, that gets lost in lesser doctrines such as Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, right? So it's what gives, it's the effect, for lack of a better word, of what the soul projects out. And that's why that little excerpt that was read, it talks about that time of death, right? Now let me back this up for 1 second, because look, bottom line is this. I've said this many times before. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen to them at their time of death. So let's not bullshit each other, right? We can only correlate it to some of the texts in many different cultures that have been left here. And I've mentioned this before, whether it's the coming forth by day in ancient Egypt, whether it's the Tibetan Book of the Dead, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, whatever. Those were trying to correlate or give us a generalization to understand that. But let's make this clear. Anybody that claims they know the answer to that is full of shit. And I've said that before. But I will also follow that up with, through your work, you get a greater understanding of that. And it's personal and it's subjective. So I'd be wasting my time if I sat there and talked about a bunch of personal experiences. But I can tell you this. I am comfortable in my understanding of that. So I want to make that clear. And you have the ability to raise yourself up to that same realization. So when it comes to that aspect of understanding death, we need to be clear on that. But in essence, yes, some do connect it in many circles to the superconscious. It's your real essence, the true you. We also get correlated to the agatho daemon or the personal daemon. All right, which is your higher self, right? That's what the word means in the Greek language. All right. Yes, Spawn. Straight Panther 79 mentioned the movie Spawn, which was very entertaining and funny too. Spawn was about that heaven and hell battle for the souls, and Al Simmons taking himself out for the fight to be his own God. And it was a good movie. A lot of good messages in that movie. And as you see, at first he doesn't embrace it, right? It always seems there's that theme in those movies where Aquaman, same way. You could go on. X-Men. It's always, that the character is never, in that type of story, never is embracing it, and it's that resistance until he or she gets that better understanding, etc. But good movie. If for those that didn't see it, I definitely would recommend take a peek at it if you get some free time. Yes, comment by Keanu earlier. You do the work and give God all the credit. It's belief. It is. Word Weaver says, I've always compared the biblical God to Trelane from from the Squire of Gothos in Star Trek, the original series. That's a good point. Very similar. Oh, damn. Hold on. Bear with me. Skipped on me. Okay. I got it. Yeah, Necrocannon said, oh, hold on. Kiana, is this the same as the Dark Night of the Soul? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Maybe you type something down there. Look. Necrocannon says they took the Norse goddess Hel, ATL, and changed the domain to Hell. Yeah, and that's all part of the indoctrination shit. They do that with everything, unfortunately. But we're all smart enough and intelligent to point it out, like you just did. That's the beauty of it when you have knowledge of self. And as they say, you're woke. John 1:1890 is about conquering the dweller on the threshold and gaining the knowledge of self. True indeed. And that's really, in essence, that's what the continual process on this path is. And that's why I was saying earlier, you should always be finding ways to challenge yourself. You should always be finding ways to better yourself. Never get complacent, never get comfortable in what you do. By challenging yourself, you keep yourself sharp at all times. By getting complacent and comfortable, that's when chaos can sneak up on you and engulf you, as we were reading through those stories, right? Important. Yeah, I think somebody, okay, Stella does, somebody gave you the, yeah, that's the Instagram. Same thing on the Facebook, Primordial Chaos on Facebook, and Primordial Chaos here on YouTube. All right, so I see I got a few more, then I'm gonna open the lines. I'm not gonna stay on for too long tonight, maybe another half an hour or hour. I give some people some time for questions. I'm not really seeing too many questions. I thought I'd get some more questions. Good comment by Nikita. I think women shouldn't be in those Abrahamic religions. They despise women. You're 100% correct. They're very chauvinistic. To this day, even when you look at, I mean, Christianity is too, but Islam and Judaism are super chauvinistic. Where yes, it's very patriarchal in nature. It suppresses the female. It's a subservient servitude role. I agree with you 100%. And the funny thing about it is, it's not like that in cultures that predate Egypt. Like, for an example, when you go into the Dravidian culture, the Hindu goddesses, the goddesses, or people don't realize polygyny was practiced first in those parts by females, not men. See, that strikes a lot of nerve in men because they don't do the research. That was a practice that was practiced by females first. But they don't talk about that. And there's a reason. Because the goal and the objective is to suppress the female. So I love when dudes bring that polygyny shit up, but they don't realize. I say, are you cool with that? Really? You cool? Okay. Hey, to each his own. I ain't judging. But did you know? They don't talk about that. All cultures that predate Abrahamic religions always upheld the woman first and foremost. In ancient Egypt, the woman, speaks for itself. We don't even need to go there. When you look in the Ifa culture, right? Only do you find that in Abrahamic religions, right? So I ask this question, name some female prophets. And I ask another question. There's one book named after a female prophet where God is not even mentioned in the entire book. Does anybody know the answer to that question? Right? Who are some of the female prophets in the Bible? Right? If you're an Eastern Star, you should know this, right? Because your order is based on this, right? But I want to point out too, Ruth and Esther, right? You can think of Naomi, right? But there is one book, and go read it and tell me if you can find it. In the book of Esther, you won't even see the word God. So what is that book really about? I'm gonna put that out there in the ethers. You guys do your research and figure it out. And Esther is one of the key chief characters if you've gone through the Eastern Star Order. What is that really talking about? Okay. I'll push you in the direction of Aset or Isis, and I'll leave it there. All right. Stella Dust says, I'm half Egyptian and half Lebanese. I'm part Lebanese, so cool. And I've been embracing my pagan path the last couple of years and have obviously been drawn to Heka. Cool. Need more information. There's so little on practices. Well, I would suggest there's a lot of good books out there. One of them I actually had earlier here. If you're really interested in Heka from a left-hand path perspective, this is a great book. Necrominion by Michael W. Ford. It's not actually Michael W. Ford's work. He actually had permission to copy the works of a man called Charles Pace. But this strictly deals with Egyptian Heka, one of the top books out there. I would also read Set, the Deity of Confusion, another really good book. Set, or The Seven Faces of Darkness by Don Webb, another good book. But I would tell you this. You're right, because when you hear a lot of information on Egypt, it's a lot of historical babble. It's basic shit, and that's the problem. Obviously, I would also get a good translation of the Book of Coming Forth by Day. Raymond Faulkner, to me, is the best translation because he goes in depth, because as we know, the Coming Forth by Day is a book of Heka or black magic. It's spells and cantations. So I would look into those. I would look into those things, but you're right. But actually, you have it by you explaining your lineage. It's in your blood, right? I don't know. Well, obviously, I think you live here in the States, I would assume. But it's in your blood. It's permeating through your DNA. Same thing with the Libyan or the Lebanese, right? We know the connection and the history there. The last 46 dynasties of ancient Egypt. So it's running through the blood. It's the DNA screaming out to you, communicating. So explore, expound, and follow that path. But I would push in that direction. I would also go into the archives here on my channel. I have many different videos on ancient Egypt, Heka, and black magic. You'll see them in the titles. So that I would suggest that you go through them when you get a chance. And stay posted with what we do here on the channel. If you got any questions, you can email me. The email's in the description box. All right. So what else we got? Brother Set Typhoon Legion. Let me shout out the brother since he's here. If he's still here, I think he is. That is the brother and the intro music I use on the show. That is his song that you hear me play every in the beginning of every show. So give the brother hit the brother up if you're interested in his music. He also, I know, has an Instagram page under the same name, I believe, and you'll see him on my page, following the page also. So the name of the artist is actually Maine. The song's called My Name Is I Am. I think I Am. My Name Is Maine, or I Am Maine. Hope I didn't butcher that. I play it all the time. I just had a blank. But hit him up. So let me read his question comment. I've read the Book of Gates, but I have read E.A. Wallace Bowles, the Book of Amtuat. Have you read Amtuat? And if so, does it have anything in comparison to the Book of Gates? Yeah, Amtuat is another name. It's another way of saying the duat. Yes, it deals with the underworld, but it doesn't go entirety into the story of the complete Book of Gates. It does deal with some aspects. There is a connection there. That's why I was mentioning earlier, really do your research to connect this to. You'll first find this inscribed on the alabaster coffin of Pharaoh Seti I. That's where the key lies if you're going to connect some research. Now, E. Wallace Bowles did this is where he got some of that information off of that alabaster. So that's why I say there's a connection there. And again, Amtuat or the Duat, there's many different ways that it's pronounced in the Greek and other languages. It's similar to the Book of Gates. The Book of Gates is probably more detailed. Now, I use what I was using earlier, if you want earlier. I was just using a very simple short form explanation of it out of the Dictionary of Egyptian Gods and Goddesses by George Hart. which is simplified. It's taking aspects right out of the Book of Gates. So I was using that. So yes, there is a similarity and a connection there. But I would also seek out and read the text of the Book of Gates in its entirety. All right. Damien, what's going on? Okay, so you just came in. All right. Okay, give me a sec. Skip. Okay, here we go. Right, word weaver, correct. Esther, it is historical. But yeah, that's the only book in the Bible you won't find the word God, right? But when you read the story of Esther, Ruth, and them, there were female savior figures because, in essence, Ruth, right? The story of Ruth and Naomi, that was a story of females being a sacrifice or a savior for their people, but it's never really talked about, right? In relation to the sister Nikita earlier, who was talking about how those religions suppress women, and I agree with 100%. I don't think any woman should be exclusive to any Abrahamic faith because it's very chauvinistic in nature. Shit, Islam is still living, in those backwards times where, we see what the fanaticism that goes on in those countries to this day, where they're trying to bring in Sharia, Islamic law, where they still want to stone people to death, where they still want women beaten for not being obedient, right? And it's fucked up how we still want to fuss and fight and argue over these religions. And the sad thing is, people go to the length of having these intense arguments and debates when not realizing that's the fucking problem from the get-go. We still keep giving life and feeding these religions. And this is what keeps the separation amongst us. This is what keeps that energy going. And if you look, it's the number one conflict worldwide that's behind. Now, whether it's an agenda and they're hiding behind it is irrelevant. But religion is almost responsible for every major conflict in the world. Look, before we were all here, most of us are on this channel right now, I'm sure. They've been fighting over Palestine, Israel, Solomon's temple before we were born. They're still fighting over it, right? We'll be long gone and they'll still be fighting over it. Wouldn't it be easy for God to just step in and say, these are my chosen people, this is who temple belongs to? Case closed. But the fuckery behind it that we don't pay attention to, there's really no difference between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. People will tell you there is. There's not. I love the Christian that's ignorant and doesn't understand Islam. So no, Islam, they worship Muhammad. Muhammad is a prophet. He's not the God of the Quran, right? He's the messenger. They believe he was the last seal of the messengers, right? Christians and Jews don't accept that. Right? Look at the fuckery real quick. I ain't gonna stay on it too long. Because it says in the Quran, right? If you're a Christian, are you going to invalidate when the angel Jibrail, who's Gabriel, supposedly came to Muhammad and said, Iqra, read, and the Quran just means the reading. So they're claiming that Muhammad received the Quran from the angel Gabriel. Angel Gabriel is a character that's central in Judaism and Christianity. And the thing that Christians and Jews don't point out, the Quran clearly states in Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow, chapter 2, verse 136, and many other places, I'm just giving you one to look. When in doubt of what this book is saying, make reference to what came before it. The Injil, which is the book of Revelations, and the Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses. It acknowledges all the prophets. Here's another trivia question for you may not know. Who's the most mentioned prophet by name in the Quran? Everybody gets this one wrong. I'll hear Muhammad. No, you would think it would be Muhammad, right? That would be the obvious answer. No. Then the second, people will say Abraham. Incorrect, and it's not Moses. Jesus is the most mentioned prophet in the Quran. They don't talk about it because there's a reason. There's a whole chapter exclusive to Jesus, one called Isa ibn Maryam. I believe it's chapter 4. And The Quran teaches that Messiah aspect, just like Christianity does. So I don't know where these differences are outside of Muhammad, not accepting Muhammad as the last and seal of the prophets. There's no difference. Now let's back it up. You got fuckery in Judaism, right? Judaism believes that Abraham is the father of their religion. Moses was the one that gave them the law, and they don't believe the Messiah has come. They don't accept Christian Messiah. So look at this confusion. God must love fucking confusion and fuckery and deceit. He's got the first sect of Judaism, pretty much the core of their religion. Then he's got the Christians, and they pretty much believe the same thing. The only thing they got difference is one doesn't accept this Messiah character, Jesus, the other does. Then it gets more fuckery when the third monotheistic religion comes along, which has everything in common with the two previous, but neither one of them two accept Muhammad as a prophet. Then you want to understand why there's confusion in the world and why religion is at the foundation of it. It's fucking confusion, man. But I think you get the point. All right. Damon says, hey, man, I have a question about the underworld gods and goddesses. Do a lot of these tap into a similar current to Santa Muerte, like the telepathic ones you have been talking about, and also some of these Egyptian ones? Yes, they're similar, but you're going to find energy-wise, they do vary. All right, let me give you an example. And that's a very good question. If you're working, let's start with the telepathic tree. For an example, let's talk about Lilith, Samael, Naama, or any of the other ones we want to bring up. But let's talk about some of the main ones. They're very intense, aggressive, raw. You can get fucked up if you don't know what you're doing working with them. So one must be prepared for very intense, drastic change. So they'll come at you on that level. Then let's say we go to the Egyptian aspect of it. I found if we're dealing with underworld deities, let's say like Amun, they are the bridge or the gap. Hold on one second. Yeah, so as I was saying, with Amun, right, a bridge or a gap between this realm of the living or the realm of the dead, which is actually, in my opinion, is reversed. We're actually dying every day we're here. This is not the realm of the living. A totally different energy. Tends to be, I'm trying to explain it the best in words. There's a very difference in vibration and frequency in working with these energies. It's not the same. In that context, they have similarities in what they represent and how they work, but you will see how the energy of working with Amun is not the same energy of working with Samael and Lilith. And then if we take it to the Holy Death, in my opinion, and again, I can only answer this question based on my experiences, and Santa Muerte, the Holy Death, I will do work with that, as you all know. To me, stands on it alone by itself. Because I say that because as I've described the energy of that particular archetype, it's like a nurturing, motherly energy. Contrary to how it's always promoted as this patron deity of prostitutes and drug cartels, which that's a very small portion of it. But it's a very tough, motherly love type of nature. Whoop your ass into shape. Lit quick, but it's a whole different vibe and frequency. So long story short, yes, there's a connection as far as a similarity as how they function and the purpose they serve, but there's a very different way of how they go about, or how you go about as the magician utilizing them to bring about that change is different. The only way you can understand that, explaining it in words, is only going to get so much of that understanding. Experience working with it will make that crystal clear, but it's a very good question. Okay, who's that? Okay, double R. I'm gonna send you the link right now, double R. Hold on. Okay, I just sent the link to you, double R, if you want to come in. All right. Yes, Anubis, the Holy Death, definitely working with the death current. But remember, when we're talking about the death current, right, and I've mentioned this on many videos in the past, how you really know you're working the death current is because the death current is one of the paths that deal with, as we said, that strong transformation and change. That's how you know. It represents intense transformation and change. All right. Okay, double R, what you got for us? I think your mic is.
Okay.
There
Yeah,
you go.
I had
There
to
you
mute
go.
myself. Okay, so I've been listening, and I just want to say this, you always go live when I'm commuting home. So I can't really get
Oh,
in and say much now. But I was listening, and I'm on live, babe. Not right now. Not right now. I'll tell you in a minute. I'm sorry.
that's all right.
I'll tell you in a minute, baby. Um so when you were talking about facing things that you're uncomfortable with,
Uh-huh.
um I've done a lot of work, like, within myself and on myself, and dealing with things that I identified that, bother me or kind of shape maybe some of the things, my behaviors and some of the ways I think. And I feel like I'm kind of good on that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I dealt with that, but I still get this, like this a little bit of like anxiety.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out, because I'm trying to, master myself and,
So let me ask
be
you a
the,
question. When you say anxiety, is it certain fears, worries? What's the cause of the
um,
anxiety?
well, like, I feel like if I, like, for example, if I have an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to do something,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm a little, I guess, afraid, or I don't
Okay.
know, if, want to use that word, that
Mm-hmm.
if I don't act on the one opportunity that's in my face, then it's not gonna come up again.
Okay.
And I'm
I
not
got
gonna ultimately end up where I want to be.
you. Gotcha.
And so, when I hear you say, like, deal with things that you're uncomfortable with, like, I'm having a hard time pinpointing what that's about, because I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be afraid of anything. I don't want to be feeling like, opportunity's not going to come back around, or I got to hurry up and do this, or else it's just, it's over, or it's going to come back around maybe another 10 years. And by that time, I'm going to be old and, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Right.
So I'm just, it's hard for me to, like one of the things that went through my mind when you were saying this, and I was kind of being like little funny, sarcastic in my head, but I'm uncomfortable with the idea of eating shit.
Right.
So I don't need to try to figure out why I'm uncomfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
Right.
um,
True.
so I'm just trying to kind of figure out, like, I guess, I don't know if I should be figuring out why
Well,
that's
you
interesting for
well,
me,
you're
or
yeah, because step one to obviously the ultimate goal is to get a solution. Obviously, that's the goal.
right.
So step one, yes, to me, you do need to figure out why to get, or at least get the understanding of what part of that self, where is that coming from? Because yeah, we could term it fear. Doesn't, when we say fear, or when you hear, and I know you know this, but I'm speaking just in general for everybody too. When we're talking about fear, we're not just talking about, oh, being scared to death. Fear is just not facing, as simple as not dealing with something that's unknown. That's a fear. So it doesn't denote a weakness in the individual. It's not something for anybody listening, that it makes you less of a person or weaker. But yes, step one, in my opinion, because remember, the ultimate purpose of this path is to master yourself, to better yourself.
Right.
So obviously you've identified there's something there. There's some type of issue and it affects you. So I absolutely, to you or anybody else listening that has similar, yes, you definitely want to grasp an understanding of what's the cause of that. And there's, devise work geared towards that, because like you used that example, which I get, when you use the opportunity example, I can connect to that. There's something there that unlocks, that makes you feel like that. So once you identify that emotion, you're able to have the awareness to now, how do I have control over it? And it's not complicated doing it. It could be simple things as just clearing your mind. Sometimes part of that issue we have, I always talk about this, we have constant influx of thoughts going through our mind all the time, consciously and unconsciously. And sometimes to get the answer to these things, we never just stop one and do. When I say literally nothing, I mean nothing. I'm not just talking about, yeah, you can sit in the darkness. That helps too. And sit in silence and listen for the awareness. See, sometimes we're so busy, we don't even do that. So we can't even tap in to the root of why we feel the way we feel about many things. That's just one example, but you can probably devise ritualistic work. I always suggest for something like that to people working with path clearing archetypes, whether it's Kali or any of that. That gives you an understanding when you devise work around that. So long story short, yes, in my opinion, I would definitely try to gain an understanding of that for sure.
Okay.
Definitely. Right?
Okay. I appreciate
Anything
that.
else? All right. Well, if you want to hang out, hang out. If you got anything else, feel free. All right.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a couple of calls. I'm going to stay on for about 20 more minutes. Okay. Only because I got some stuff I got to do before the night disappears on me. All right. So let me, if anybody wants, I think my put the video in. I mean the video, the call-in number. Hold on. Let me make sure that's all connected though before I do that. All right. Hold on. I think 561-962-1137. That's the call-in number. So if anybody wants to call in, call in. Let me just make sure I got everything up and running. I think I do. Hold on. Yeah, should be good. All right, I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes. I don't think there's anything else. I don't see any new questions in the chat. So I'm going to bypass that. All right. Don't see. I'll give you guys a couple more minutes for a few questions. If not, my goal was till 10:30 tonight, so we still have about 12 minutes. All right. So my goal would be to do that. All right. Hold on 1 second. Let me just make sure this is up and running. Hold on, I'm checking something here real quick. Hold on. Bear with me, people. Hold on. All right. All right, again, 561-962-1137. That's the number you want to call. All right.
I have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
And you might have spoke on this before, but I don't recall. Is it necessary prior to working with the deity when doing road clearing work? Is it necessary to offer before you ask for assistance?
No.
Okay.
One thing we got to do, asking.
Well, I mean,
No, I know what you're saying.
yeah.
That's more traditional. All offerings and things like that in those systems, that's a traditional thing. Because you hear me talk about a lot. I don't really mess with any of that stuff because when you're not in control when you approach it like that. Now, yes, you will find that concept in a lot of spiritual systems such as Ifa, and systems similar to it. Now, there is a higher aspect you'll find in some left-hand path systems, and I'll refer you to you'll see this scattered. Even like working with Lilith or Hecate, there are certain offerings. It might be like a drop of your personal blood, per se. There's particular offerings to some of them. It could be like in other traditions, a food or a liquid offering, yes. But when it's used more so on this path, it's more to make, a connection or a pact, or connect yourself with that energy. I wouldn't use the offering approach as a servitude type of thing. And I'm not saying that's what you were saying, but long story short, no, it's not necessary to do any offering. That's entirely up to you. If you feel in your work it enhances it, then so be it. But that's up to you. It should never be dictated to you, which a lot of those traditions will, the aforementioned. They'll make it sound as if it's mandatory, that, oh, you should do it. No. Because remember, you are the magician. You're always in control. When you surrender that control to something outside of you, you're not in control anymore. So,
yeah,
not mandatory.
Okay.
No, definitely not mandatory, for sure. But it's a good question.
Thank you.
All right. Hold on one sec. Sending an email. All right. Give it another minute. If anybody got any questions, let me go back to the chat, see if I missed anything in there. I was just sending an email for you, so I'm trying to do a couple of things simultaneously here, so bear with me. All right, hold on. All right. Just give me 1 sec here. I'm just responding to somebody about something that's kind of important. Hold on 1 sec. One sec. All right, so let me see if I missed anything in the chat. All right, so I see a question by Cinnamon and Saves. Cool name. All right, so you came in late. That helps. So my question is random. Anubis is the god over embalming the dead. Why is it said to put him next to your bed? Well, Anubis is a lot more than the god over embalming the dead. It deals with working with, quote unquote, that death current. He is a gateway deity that bridges from this realm to the spiritual realm. You see so much more if you go into the Egyptian texts and the Egyptian stories. He is the one that guides the individual through the underworld. So there's a lot more significance to that. And so I'm just adding that to your statement. But there is that connection to what you said, too, with the embalming of the dead, preparing the individual for the journey, right? You also see the significance. I've mentioned this before. If you ask most Christians why they wear black to funerals, they couldn't really give you an answer because it's nowhere in any Bible or any religious text. We know Anubis is the black jackal dog, right? People wear black to funerals because that represents actually Anubis, whether they're conscious of it or not. The funny thing is, in ancient Egyptian ceremonies where somebody has transitioned, white is worn at the ritual, not black. But they wear the black in funerals in a lot of these traditions today because whether they're conscious of it or not, they are connecting with the Anubis energy. Now, you'll see in some systems, as far as keeping the image near your bed, that's something you will find that was done in a lot of cultures. I've even suggested people to try that because they say keeping that energy close to you while you sleep kind of gives you messages and visions in the dream realm, because there too you connect with Ampu or Anubis. He communicates to the magician via dreams. A good ritual to do with that is find any different images of Anubis and kind of gaze upon them and capture the image in your mind before you go to sleep, and you'll see subconsciously what it can unlock. But that's why you'll see in certain circles, it's a suggestion, if you so choose in your path and your work, they'll say keep an image close to your bed. Okay, so hopefully that works. Tanisha, how do most learn how to do complete root work? It depends, because most would go, if you take the normal traditional route, you would go up on. We were talking a little bit about this last week with Bokor Rodney Coleman. First, you got to have your own personal connection with whatever energies you're working with to make that work effective. So that's key one. So how you go about it, obviously, you would have to understand what you're connected to. If you're unsure of that, the correct method would be, and you got to be careful you find the right person, you would have to study up under somebody, because you would have to know how to create these certain formulas when it comes to working with certain herbs, certain liquids, when working witchcraft and magic in that system. So if you don't have knowledge of that, you would either have to figure that out on your own by doing your own research, or study up under somebody that has that knowledge that's going to teach you sincerely. Now, the other problem with that is some people will only do it, like Bokor was saying last week, if you're part of their family lineage. That's the other problem. Other than that, you would have to find what they call a house and somebody that would take you up under your wing to teach you that. That becomes the challenging part, with not running into somebody that's trying to take you to the cleaners, rip you off, and take all your money. Because there's a lot of work involved in it. There are a lot of books out there that gives you a general idea or a good idea aspect how to create some of these things. But again, like Bokor Rodney was talking about, and that's why I asked him the question about the goofer's dust and the graveyard dirt, right? A lot of that shit you get from a lot of those places, unless you really know the manufacturer and the place and they got a reputable reputation, you don't really know what you're getting. So you may not even know what you're working with. So that's the best thing I can tell you on that. So it's a process. All right, what else we got? Yes, SA 180. There is a connection to the astrological signs with the 12 gates. Yes, because when you look at, if you read the Book of Gates, you'll see the journey as it traverses through the stars. I can't think of the book offhand. There's a book, or I have it somewhere, buried with my other book. Well, not buried, but in with my other books. I can't remember the name of the author, where they correlate all the books, all the gates to the astrological signs. And you can do work and connect with the work via the astrological. So yes, there is a connection there. All right. Cinnamon and Sage. Pretty fucking cool name. Yes, I've heard of that, Nikita, giving set raw meat offerings. I have heard of that. And a good point. And that's what when Double R was bringing that question up. If you feel the need, that's up to you. But as long as you're the one dictating that. And I was bringing up the point just a few minutes back. Unfortunately, in spiritual systems like Santeria and Ifa, it's very religious in nature. Like they'll say stupid shit like, you have to give Shango an offering of bananas. And then they'll even say dumber shit. If they set up a altar or a throne for Shango and the bananas have been out there for a while and they start to decay and rot, they'll say dumb shit like, look, Shango's eating the bananas. No, motherfucker. If you leave, we all know if we leave bananas on our countertop, we all see them turn. How many of us have, come on. If we leave bananas on your countertop for a while and we don't eat them, what happens to them? They get very ripe. They start to get discolored. So Shango's not eating the bananas, people. Nature's doing its thing, what nature does. It's just decaying the food. So that's why I'm saying that. As long as the approach is coming from you and you're connecting with it your own personal way to work your system to get results, no problem. But when we start externalizing it like that, like Shango's eating the banana and all that shit, then that's not what this path is about. But good point that you bring up, Nikita. You feel the need, not because guru such and such told you it's mandatory you do this. That's all bullshit. Esmail Bey, how do you learn and start working with the Veve? Well, one, it would depend on, there's Veves in many different systems. There's Veves dealing with the Goetians, right? There's Veves dealing with the Voodoo deities and pantheons. There's Veves or sigils, which is very similar in Palo Manto, Palo Mayembe. So one, you'd have to identify one, be very conscious of the system you're working with. Obvious thing, the first thing is all Veves represent a certain thing. For an example, let's use Papa Legba's Veve, right? Very, very familiar one in Voodoo, which represents the four gates. We see it. You have the cane of Papa Legba. And that particular Veve is used to open the gates, right? I will use that Veve to open the gates to higher states of consciousness. So once you understand what the Veve represents, then you can apply it. For example, if we say open paths, that can mean physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So you can work with that Veve in any of those areas. So it depends on what the Veve is, the system, and what it represents. That will push you in the right direction of how you can utilize that symbol, right? That's the best way, all right? All right, people, it's 10:32. I think I'm gonna wrap it up. I don't see any more questions. Don't see anybody calling in. Plus, it's getting past the time, and I do need to get to something. So real quick, before I do that, just a reminder, again, we'll be on Thursday night. I'm not sure what the show is going to be. Got a couple ideas. We might have somebody on. I'll let you know by tomorrow or Wednesday. So we'll be on Thursday night. So look to see you all back here on Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Reminder, we have the event at the end of the month on May 31st, 8 o'clock. The online classes will begin on July 20th. I've sent that information out. If you haven't gotten it and you'd like information on the upcoming online classes, just send me an email. I'll get it to you. And if you're interested in a consultation or a reading, just send me an email. Right there, you see in the description box, knum19@gmail.com, KHNUM19@gmail.com. And I'll leave you on this note. Yeah.
And don't forget, October event. It's already May.
I said that in the beginning. Yeah, I'll say it again. October 25th to the 27th, which is a 3-day event we're going to have. If you're interested in attending, that'll be different workshops, classes, presentations. If you would like to do a presentation and you're coming, let us know. And, let us know. We'd be more than happy to see if we can get you, fit you in the itinerary or the schedule. All right. And I'd leave you with this note. I would encourage you to explore the Nocturnal Journey of Ra to the Underworld more and see what you get out of it. All right. As usual, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate the support. Check us out. We are on Instagram, Primordial Chaos. We are on Facebook, Primordial Chaos, right here on YouTube. Obviously, you're all here. Check out the pages. I appreciate everybody that supports. As usual, we'll see everybody on Thursday. All right. Peace.